cantare, alleluia, quia meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit, sicut dixit, alleluia, ora pro nobis Deum, alleluia.
Man, that is something, you know. I just, to me, it's such a sign of hope, just for me personally, when you think about it. How many hundreds of years the revolution against the Catholic Church, all things Catholic, has been going on. And all of a sudden, the 267th successor of St. Peter, whose bones are right over here, this man who died, this fisherman who died 2,000 years ago, we have a new successor to St. Peter. The entire world press shows up to see what's going on. You just can't get past the Catholic Church. They can try to destroy it, they can mock it, they can undermine it in any number of ways. At the end of the day, they're there going, what's going to happen next? I met David Muir, what is he, CBS or whatever he is? ABC. David Muir out in the street yesterday with his little fancy, camera crew, and they're here to find out what's going to happen. It just makes me so happy as a Catholic, despite the revolution, when the Regina Caeli is sung by the Holy Father, not only to 300,000 people, but to the whole world, right? This is just the Catholic thing. I'm not making a comment about Leo right now. Yeah. The Catholic thing is just so powerful, and that's why you have to hang in here. That's why you're not going to leave the church. We're going to get these buildings back. How many times have I said that? Standing right out there, So what we're doing here, friends, and I really, before I even get started, I want to thank everybody. Man, we've got millions of views, and I'm trying to get through as many comments as I can, but our team here is, our team here is trying to go through and find like the general theme or the general, what's the prevailing opinion about not only our work, but about Pope Leo. So I want to kind of tell you, give you a little idea, and to thank you for kind of coming along with me. I trust those of you who know me and follow us for years and years and years. You understand I've been at this all my life. I'm not particularly enamored with Romanitas. My head is not easily turned because people are saying, don't fall for it, Michael Matt. You're being seduced, Michael Matt. This is not my first rodeo. I've done 3 conclaves. I understand where we're at. I understand who Cardinal Prevost was. I've met him. I've seen him. I've listened to him talk over in the press hall over the past couple of years. We're looking at a new pope, and I want to give you like the fairest evaluation based on what we're hearing on the street, talking to journalists, talking to people who really, really know this town. One of the things that they say, and you've heard this, it's interesting, I hear it over and over again, there's a calm in Rome again. And they say this with a smile on their face. People who were actually like kind of concerned, I'm not sure about Prevost, I don't know, before the conclave, they weren't fans of Prevost, but they were saying there is something calming about him, there's something serious, there's a gravitas, there's a Catholicity, there's a spirituality, there's a lot of beautiful things if externals mean anything, and they kind of should, because certainly when Francis came on the loggia, externals meant a lot. We were all horrified by the externals, the messages that they seemed to be trying to signal. All of the messages, all the signals so far have been good. And people say, yeah, but he's Francis II. We're going to talk about that tonight. Maybe he is, but that's not the point. Nor is he Pope Pius X. Again, I was joking about we need Pope Pius XIII. I didn't really expect that, right? You hope for that, but this revolution took way too long for it to suddenly be resolved just like that, although God could do that. So what we're doing as traditional Catholics, we're constantly scanning the horizon for when true restoration might at least have a second, might be able to take a first baby step, right? Maybe that's happening now, maybe it's not. But I see no reason in coming out and telling this audience, it's the worst, man, it's terrible, it's Francis 2.0. I don't understand how that would help anybody. And judging from your comments, none of you seem to want to hear that. Everybody wants to do the Catholic thing. Give us the truth. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't Pollyanna it. Don't give us false hope. What's going on? What is the feeling? I'll give you an example. I would love for this to be a true rumor that Cardinal Prevost has been seen spotted around town saying the Latin Mass. I'm a traditional Catholic. If that were true, that'd be fantastic. If I could just spread that rumor and make my little case, it'd be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? It's called fake news. You know why? Because we don't know if it's true or not. So I'm not trying to give you any false hope. And I remember very clearly, I've heard this before, it was like deja vu. Cardinal Ratzinger and then Pope Benedict XVI, same rumors early on. He's saying the traditional Latin Mass privately. Yes, he's doing it all the time, especially on Christmas Eve. He's saying the Latin Mass. And we all wanted to believe it, but guess what? We never saw any evidence of that. So I'm not here to try to give anybody false hope. I'm here to try to be a Catholic journalist, doing my job to try to give you, this audience, the best sort of sense of what's going on and what we can expect. Now, if he turns out to be Francis II and it's an absolute disaster, well, we all have time to get used to that and to go back into the resistance mode, which we will. We came off 12 years of Francis. That's why people say, don't fall for it. I say, fall for what? We just came through Francis. So, but during the time of Francis, we saw the greatest coming together of the clans, of the Catholic counter-revolution, if you will, that I've ever seen in my lifetime. So I'm not terrified, you know what I mean? I'm not scared that this guy might be Francis II. I would like to think that that won't happen, but I will say, talking to people who know the situation and who've gone through conclaves like I have and who live here in Rome, that idea that the personality of the man matters, that there's a calming effect, that he seems to have the faith on some level, this could make all the difference in the world. We're going to talk more about that.
Well, let's get into some of the concerns then that some people have had.
Yeah.
One of the most common ones that came up was, is he really sort of anti-Trump? And then do you think that there's any connection between this man becoming Pope and Trump breaking with Netanyahu?
Well, I would say that we don't know anything about what Trump's actually thinking, but think about what you know about the man. Donald Trump, the American, he's like, I'm here, I'm going to be the greatest president ever, I'm going to make America great again. And all of a sudden there's an American Pope. You don't think that he's thinking, hey, you know what? Guess who's responsible for that? I'll tell you real quick who's done. I got the American. I can just imagine. I got you a Pope, yeah. So I think even Trump, people who say, I know he hates Donald Trump. Okay. I'll bet you don't know that.
It mostly has to do with his position on immigration, it seems like. It's kind of boiled down to that.
Right. And Donald Trump isn't like how he relates to Donald Trump is how I'm going to evaluate the Pope. That's kind of childish. You know what I mean? The world is a big place. It's bigger than America. But the evidence, again, what we can dig up so far, the evidence suggests that there very easily could be a working together here. So I'm going to give you an example. There's a difference between being open borders and being Christian in your attitude towards how you handle immigrants, migrants, yeah. So, for example, when Pope Francis talked about it, God rest his soul, but when he talked about this question, you always felt like he was shilling for George Soros, like he was talking about the globalist, no borders thing. Now, Cardinal Prevost has a different take on this. So people say he's against Trump's border policy. You don't know that yet. We don't know that. Here's what he said a little while ago. Walter, play that clip. Where his position on immigration and what to do with these migrants, these people who have been displaced from their own countries. I've met many of these people over my travels over the years. It's a horrific thing when your country gets blown up or torn up by war and you end up wandering the face of the earth trying to find some place to live. Well, there's all sorts of reasons for why they were displaced. Mostly the neocon wars displaced them. But my position on what to do with them once they get here, I don't want open borders. I don't want them coming in illegally. But what to do with them, Cardinal Prevost basically has what Trump is claiming to have, certainly what I have, the attitude that I have about it. We need to fix this massive problem, but we have to do it without violating their dignity. And that's just the Catholic position. So why don't we just roll that little clip from Cardinal Prevost talking about that.
Where all these immigrants continue to come. It's a huge problem, and it's a problem worldwide, not only in this country. There's got to be a way both to solve the problem, but also to treat people with respect. Every one of us, whether we were born in the United States of America or on the North Pole, we all are given that gift of being created in the image and likeness of God. And the day we forget that is the day we forget who we are. We forget who Christ has called us to be.
What about that second part? Does this man becoming Pope have any kind of connection with Trump breaking with Bibi?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't believe that news. It just happened this morning where Donald Trump came out in favor of the Palestinian state, the two-state solution. This is
recognizing the state.
The state of Palestine, exactly. This is massive. Reportedly, Bibi is all upset.
It's a 180, don't you think?
Absolute 180. And I would say to people who were kind of critical of us, don't criticize the Donald. He's going to be doing fine over there and backing Bibi all the way. So this is where I get a little frustrated. I'll tell you the truth. Resistance works. And I'm not just talking about our resistance. Resistance, global, worldwide resistance against what was happening to the Gazans, to the Palestinians, worked, obviously. And we called this. If I can just polish my little halo or whatever. I hate quoting myself, but we call this. We pointed out that if Bibi Netanyahu and the neocon war machine becomes problematic for Donald Trump, he's going to break it. He might be the first president to actually sever this ridiculous, suicidal alliance with Israel, when it includes blowing the living daylights out of our Christian brethren, Christian Palestinians. So we had coming in here, you had, what is that guy's name? That little Zion, yes, the Rabbi Shmuley, made a flight flew all the way over here to Rome as Francis was on his deathbed to make sure that Francis, before he died, recognized Israel, Jerusalem, as the home of the Jewish people and nothing else. When he gets here, apparently Pope Francis was too ill, and so he meets with whom? He meets with Cardinal Parolin. You remember Cardinal Parolin, the guy who was #1 to become the next pope. So what would happen now? Shmuley was so pleased, saying the next pope is going to be Parolin. That's going to be great. Mr. Zionist was all in favor of that. Instead of that happening, I would think that our people would be, whew, that's a relief. At least it wasn't Parolin. Now you have Pope Leo XIV. He gets up there on the loggia today after singing the Regina Coeli, which we just showed you, after blessing us 3 times in triplicate in Latin and doing all this rather nice traditional stuff. Here's what he says. This is Pope Leo this morning. I am deeply pained by what is happening in the Gaza Strip. Let the ceasefire begin immediately. Okay, so that's one thing. Provide humanitarian aid to the exhausted civilian population and free all the hostages. So he's kind of taken, both sides. Hey, yeah, Hamas, free all the hostages as well. So this is both sides there. He comes out and I think really takes a shot at the whole Zionist thing that's going on over there. So this would be a really good example, as far as I'm concerned, of why you never give up, why you keep on resisting, why you don't become a fanboy either to the president or to the Pope. Resist with respect, especially with the Pope, obviously. Stand up to Donald Trump. No, we're not putting up with what's happening to our brethren in Gaza, many of whom are Christian. The same thing happens with the pontiff, with the Pope. Resistance is not an anti-Catholic or some sort of a belligerent thing to do. We don't want to be resisting the Pope at all. Archbishop Lefebvre didn't want to resist the Pope. That's a ridiculous position to be in. Nobody's over here right now, at least I'm certainly not. I'm going to resist him just as soon as he does one thing wrong. I'm going to knock him right off the loggia because I'm a tradie. I say it like it is. Can't wait. That's not the thing at all. So the resistance that we've always talked about and that I and my father, my grandfather engaged in for 100 years has to do with respectful, noble resistance. Holy Father, we cannot go along with this. We must, out of love and fealty to you as your loyal sons, resist you to your face. That's what it was. Now that can happen again next week if he suddenly comes out and turns into Francis II. But it hasn't quite happened yet, and I feel like it's my obligation as a Catholic, a faithful son of the Church, to not anticipate that, to take him for the new Pope that he is and see what happens.
So one of the other concerns that comes up most of all is, are you concerned as well about the commitment to the synodal way?
Of course I am. But let me say something that will probably scandalize people. Synodality as it was presented, this isn't the scandalous part, synodality as it was presented, and I have been to the synods on synodality. I've sat in the Vatican press halls and I've heard it. I've tried to become something of an expert on what they're doing, what they're talking about over here, so I'm not deceived by it. And I've done plenty of videos making fun of pathways and journey and accompaniment and all the nonsense words, right? The buzzwords. But I would say this. If what Pope Leo means by synodality and listening especially means he wants to come out into the world and listen to, like, for example, the traditional Catholics, what kind of a crazy, idiotic thing would it be for me to say, we're not going to let you listen to us, Holiness, we hate synodality. So synodality is like I remember in the press hall time and time again during the synod on synodality, sensing the frustration of the press when they would ask the question, what do you guys mean by synodality? What do you mean? And they never got a straight answer. You know who knows they never got a straight answer? Cardinal Prevost.
Do you think there's any kind of way that we could play the synodal game and beat them at it?
Well, let me give you an example. A bishop, I don't want to name him, but a bishop up in my neck of the woods, in a different diocese, but in my state, not too long, a couple of years ago, he allowed the traditional Latin Mass to, not only allowed it to stay in his diocese, but he went out and he celebrated it. And when I heard he was celebrating the traditional Latin Mass, this bishop, I flew up there, drove up there fast, and attended it, and asked him afterwards, what happened? How did you decide to come to this, Your Excellency? He said, well, I had set up the listening sessions, And I encouraged people to come and tell me what they thought, what the diocese needed. And he said a group of traditional Catholics, a strong group of traditional Catholics, came to those listening sessions, and they spoke, and they made their case, and I listened, and it was a perfectly reasonable case. And so, yes, a traditional Mass will stay here. That's strategy. That's beating them at their own, not this bishop, but I mean, in other words, like take advantage of the situation and try to make it happen. Now, there's another example, if we have time. I think we do, Walt. You have time? Another example would be on the floor, again, of the press hall during the last October's Synod on Synodality, where the veteran Vatican journalist Diane Montagna, she said, what about the people who, well, I won't even have to quote it. Let's just play that clip and watch his response at the Synod on Synodality.
One group that really feels marginalized, particularly in the United States, have been the people the Catholics who go to the traditional Latin Mass. And so I just wonder what you think those people and priests could perhaps contribute to the next assembly, and if they should see more inclusion in the synodal process. Thank you.
In terms of those who are attracted to the traditional form of the Mass, I think the Church is big enough for everyone, and I think that certainly their fervor, their devotion to family life, their attention to passing on the teachings of the Church to their children, I think those are all things that can enrich all of us, and I hope there'll be a way to bring that richness into this whole synodal experience.
You have to remember, friends, before we go on to what Cardinal Prevost, the clip that we found yesterday, diabolical disorientation, as I've said so many times, affects all of us, including me, all of us. We live in a diabolically disoriented world. And it's been a long time since the Church was traditional Catholic. It's a long time for people to figure these things out. Many of these men were formed in the Novus Ordo. They're just now, I think, thanks to COVID, thanks to the last 12 years, they're coming to realize that something's very wrong. I mean, really wrong in the Church and in the world. And they're taking a more serious look at things. So that's how I want to ask some questions in the here and now about what's happening here. So people say, well, Pope Leo is obviously a big synodality guy. Okay, but as I said, we need to understand how he defines that, first of all, and then we'll deal with how he intends to implement that. I will say this, sitting in the press office, listening to him, here's exactly what was in my mind. I think I even put it on video. I said, this man seems so reasonable. He seems like he has the faith. He's so genuine. He's not trying to, sort of intimidate anyone. He's not angry. And his answers were the answers of a guy who was trying to say, well, I think we need to understand what synodality means and what it doesn't mean. So he was asked the question about women deacons and priests. Again, Cardinal Robert Prevost, who was asked about this just today in the press hall. And the answer that he gave, however sort of gently and weakly in my opinion, it's not the answer that the progressives want to hear. It never will be. Here's what he said.
Clericalizing women doesn't necessarily solve a problem. It might make a new problem. And that perhaps we need to look at a new understanding or different understanding of both leadership, power, authority, and service, above all service, in the Church from the different perspectives that can be, if you will, brought to the life of the Church by women and men. But I think that one of the things that has become clear during even this month, but the time leading up to this, is that it's not just a given that because in society women are recognized, that, well, a woman can be president or a woman can have many different kinds of roles of leadership in the world. It's not like there's an immediate parallel to say in the Church, therefore, and that our categories, I think, and the life of the Church are different, need to be different, and so some of those questions will continue to be there, to be reflected upon, but it isn't as simple as saying that, at this stage we're going to change, if you will, the tradition of the Church after 2,000 years.
In other words, ladies, no women priests, ever, and no gay marriage either in the Catholic Church.
All right, so probably the third most common concern that people have is the alleged cover-up.
The sexual cover-up, okay. this is a tough one, and I always, before I ever comment on it at all, stress sensitivity towards the victims. I am not in any sense trying to be insensitive to the victims when I say that there has been use and unfair use of this problem. It's not only in the Catholic Church, it's in politics and other religions and so forth, to use these claims to discredit someone or to discredit the Church itself. So I think it would have been extremely problematic after the last 12 years especially to put another man in who had very credible allegations against him for cover-up. That just seems like, and the problem is, if it's true, every cardinal would have known that when Pope Leo says something strong in defense of marriage or whatever, he has some beautiful statements, by the way, in defense of marriage and the family, against the gender ideology and all
When
that.
the press gets mad at them.
Press gets ticked off at him. They're going to roll all this out here.
Right.
So why in the world would anybody do that? So I'm looking at the case. I see, if there are credible allegations, of course, absolutely, we can't go through this again. But I'm also not going to condemn him based on what somebody I've never met was said about some cover-up somewhere down in Peru or wherever it was. We just got to wait and see on that one. And I will remind people that this is happening all around. I've talked to SNAP here on the ground. They're talking about a lot of people really kind of going after the Church, right? And kind of ignoring the sexual problems in the Jewish religion and the Muslim religion, the Protestant. It's just the Catholic Church this one's being used against. I'm not saying that means that all of it are false charges, but there is a political game involved here. You have people going after the bishops of the Society of St. Pius X for the same reason, So you have to be really, really careful and make sure that you don't do one of two things. Either dismiss the plight of real victims or condemn good men who are being slammed. So all I would say, and I'm not an expert on this, but I would say that if you are a bishop, it is difficult to know how to handle these cases. And what we can see from the cases that came to Prevost, he tried to, encourage them to go to civil authorities. He did all those things that were. Some people say that's not enough, and I would say there is it's not as easy as it sounds to fix this. The old way, for example, was to take a man who was accused and to put him out in a monastery somewhere. And some good bishops did this, where they could control and watch. Guess what? Those days are gone. But that wasn't a cover-up. That was an effort to take the guy out of the situation, put him over here to prevent scandal among the faithful. I'm just giving this as an example of how things not that long ago would work. The world sees that as an immediate cover-up. It didn't used to be. It wasn't a cover-up. It was dealing with a very difficult and evil and sick situation, a bad guy most of the time. Now, if a priest is accused of sexual assault or whatever, sexual abuse, I think you almost have to call the police immediately for his own sake. And I only bring all of this up, again, not to dismiss any of the plight of victims, but just to try to give a little bit larger, broader understanding. This is a really, really tough issue. If it's true that he was lax on these things, I think it's going to come out, and then we're going to look at the conclave and go, what were you guys thinking? But at this point, I think the best thing to do is just like, don't gloss over it, don't pretend like it didn't happen, but let's wait and see what happens on that question. Pray for the best.
Yeah, there was a flurry of comments over his female lectors at his first Mass in the Sistine. What do you think about that?
It seems to be sort of manufactured outrage, at least coming from traditionalists. I don't understand. What do they think was going to happen here? This is why I thought it was important.
Novus Ordo Mass after?
This is Novus Ordo. This is the Novus Ordo still.
Who gave us the female lectures in Altar Girl?
Pope John Paul II. That shows you how long that's been going on, and to on one hand anticipate that suddenly Pope Leo is going to come in here and just do away with all that is unrealistic.
Why wouldn't he?
Right, exactly. But in other words, this is just completely par for the course. I don't understand why people would expect anything else at this point. Again, this is Pope John Paul II's work. He gave us altar girls. Pope Benedict had lady readers, if you will. And this is just the situation that we're in. This is the Novus Ordo. We didn't expect anything else. We're looking for that wiggle room, I think, more than anything else, for a pope who will allow the traditional Mass and the traditional arguments to be consistently made throughout the world in the Church. Not for, as I say, not for Pope Pius X to suddenly appear miraculously and make all things new again. That's going to happen. I get up every day. Do you know what? I get up every day knowing that we're going to win in the end, knowing that because God wins in the end. We're just standing on 2,000 years of tradition. This is going to come back. And if you take somebody my age, we went literally from Latin Masses in the basement of our homes to Latin masses at the
St. Mary
Chartres
Major.
Cathedral. St. Mary Major, just yesterday, there was a traditional Latin Mass. I think it was the Institute of Christ the King. I've been to traditional Latin Masses in the Basilica of St. Peter at the side altars. I mean, and some of the main altars, you know. The traditional church, traditional Mass, it should have been crushed and buried a long time ago. But instead, just in the course of my life, I've seen things change. That, again, the reason that we got the Latin Mass, I think, to begin with, back in 88 or 84, the first indult, was because they were like, okay, a bunch of old ladies in tennis shoes that want this, so, you know, all right, we'll let them do it, so maybe we can get the SSBX to come back in or whatever. But they never thought it was going to last, much less become a worldwide movement. And that's precisely what it did. It became not only a worldwide movement, but a youth movement. They never saw that coming. And I've said so many times, to show you the progress that's been made, you know what I cite? Traditionis Custodes. That is the slam dunk proof of the progress that has been made, where the Pope, instead of doing what they'd done for a long time, which was basically ignore these weird little ladies in sneakers, okay, go away, here's your little Mass, but, you know, on Tuesdays, on Thursdays, in the worst neighborhoods in town, whatever. And instead of that, it became such a huge thing, like the Chartres pilgrimage, for example, this massive demonstration of traditional vitality and youth, that the Pope himself spent his last few years, I'm sorry, I think history is going to talk about the fact he spent his last few years discrediting himself and his pontificate over the issue of liturgy. So the world was able to see this and just say, what's going on? Why is it that the Vatican is trying to shut down the bright spot in the liturgical life of the Church, where you have all these young families coming up in the traditional Latin Mass movement? The world, even though they don't understand a lick of theology or of liturgy or anything else, they collectively scratch their head. What is this Pope doing? Why is he so angry at these little traditionalists? You know, I think that's the best example of the progress that was made to the point where it reached the highest echelons of the Church, and they're trying to crush it, and unsuccessfully so. What is Pope Leo going to do with this? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out. From what we've seen so far, people who know him personally, there's no reason to think that he's going to crush the Latin Mass. Am I saying he's not going to crush? I have no idea. I'm just saying the early signs are probably he'll be sort of a diplomat about that. He's going to sort of bridge the divide and try to get some peace in the Church over that issue.
So what would you ask the followers to be doing now? What's their job?
I think it's really, really important for traditional Catholics now, as I've used that imagery so many times, stand on the wall. Stand on the wall. Hold the Catholic ground. Let them see your rosaries. Let them see your traditional priests. And let them see a side, a loyal side. In other words, heartbroken. You know what I mean? Heartbroken by what's happened to our Church is so much more important right now than defiance. And I say it like it is, and I will tell the Pope to go to hell because I'm a traditional Catholic. You know what I mean? Like, and thank God the vast majority of traditional Catholics are not. They do not fit that stereotype. But all the more so, that's why we're staying here in Rome. We're going to go to the meeting of the press tomorrow when Pope Leo will come out and meet the press. We will be there. We'll see how he reacts with the world press in person. And again, get a better idea. Hope maybe, who knows, if they're going to take questions or what they're going to do. But we have to be able to let him see people who are very firm in our convictions. We're not going to compromise. We're not going to back down. But we're also going to stay in the game. We're going to stay right in the Church, and we're going to try to let him know, if you support the traditions of the Church. That's why what happened on the loggia with the vestments, that's why the triple blessings that he's been giving all around the Vatican in Latin lately, private ones and public ones, that's why it means something. That's why him moving back into the papal apartment means something. Like Raymond Arroyo said, let's be done with this humble brag, you know. The papal apartments are rather austere. It's where the Pope lives. It's where he can bless his people, where they know they can see his little light in the window. Him moving back into there and away from the Casa Santa Marta suggests that he's trying to send a signal, a new day in the Church. One that hopefully, if they are sincere about their synodality, will include listening to everyone, including traditional Catholics, and we can continue this fight. That doesn't mean compromise. That means showing him, again, dutiful, loyal opposition. That's, to me, is the beautiful way to describe the traditional Catholic movement. Loyal opposition. We can start denouncing him if we want, shout and yell, down with the Pope, you know, out there in the piazza. A couple of weeks later, guess what we're doing? We're talking to our mother and some of her friends on YouTube, and that's it. We're not here at all to put any pressure on what the future of the church is going to be. People say, well, you don't even matter, man. Who cares about you guys? Yeah, you're right. Who does care about us? But the thing is, the talk of the town, even during the conclave, what's the position on the Latin Mass with the papabulate, right? That was not the discussion 30 years ago. It is now. Why? Because the traditional Catholic movement organized itself, kept the faith, stayed in the church without compromise, and everybody's aware of it, right? And I think a man who's Cardinal Prevost's age, you know what? I'm sorry. He's not a hippie. He doesn't bring the hippie baggage. He doesn't bring the Vatican II Woodstock baggage quite as much, perhaps, at least we hope, judging by his age. He's 69 years old. I don't think he's going to have the same angst, the same desire to follow in those sort of angry footsteps, anti-trad. Yeah. Give you an example. I mean, EWTN, for example, years ago, they would have been considered neo-Catholics. Now, I think a lot of them, I mean, Raymond Arroyo, for example, what a guy. I mean, this is a fantastic spokesman for this movement towards the right, even liturgically, back to sanity, back to tradition. So I'm not just talking through my hat. I'm certainly not just talking about my organization. You can look all around and see people who are moving in traditional directions. And that's what we're hoping here. Not that Leo is Pius X, but there might be a sign that he's moving away from that reign of terror and that he's going to help people. He's going to actually try to build some bridges, buy some time for us to continue the Catholic counter-revolution with respect, with adamancy, without compromise. And that's the job. We stay in the church and we fight. Just like some of the good cardinals, the Cardinal Burkes who are here, Cardinal Mullers. Stay part of the process, just from a political and strategic point of view. Stay in the church for your soul. There's nothing on the outside of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is our mother. Here you have the impression she is our castle. She is our castle. And to a large extent, she's in flames. We don't dash out the windows and go hide and find some safe place where we can get away from the bad guys or we can get away from the fire. She is our mother. We love her. We're her most loyal sons. You can imagine your own mother being beat up or being raped and you just run and hide somewhere so it doesn't happen to you. You got to stay close, right, to the church, to the human element of the church, confident that the divine element of the church is doing just fine. The church triumphant is doing just fine. The church suffering is doing fine to the extent that they can, and the church militant is at war. That's us. Church suffering are the souls in purgatory. They're still in the church. They're on their way to the church triumphant. So are we, hopefully. But we need to stay here. We need to stay in the church no matter how hard it is. Do you think it wouldn't be kind of fun, somebody with my temperament, to tell them all to go to hell? I'm going to go off and start my own deal. I won't cooperate with you guys at all. Oh, sure, the human part of me would want to do that. What's the point of that, though? It simply is not Catholic, right? So I think that's those ideas. That idea would be what I would like to see now moving forward throughout the entire traditional Catholic movement. Of course, it happens on steroids on the Sharp pilgrimage, where you have this respectful, beautiful example of traditional Catholics who are looking to restore the church for the sake of their children, for the sake of the church, for the sake of souls. And that's what we want to be. I want Pope Leo to see the traditional Catholic movement for exactly what it is. And that, I don't think, should be, that the vision that he sees should not be all of us trying feverishly to condemn the man before he even gets out of the gate. Let's see what happens.